The shrill sound of a man yelling pierced through the ambient noise of the small coffee shop, drawing Grayson Reed's attention away from the stack of past-due bills spread across his table. His weathered hands paused over the calculator as his eyes darted to the counter where a red-faced businessman was berating a woman who stood with her back to him. "Do you have any idea who I am?" The man barked, his designer suit a stark contrast to the humble surroundings of being there. Done that, the local coffee shop where Grayson often came to sort through his financial troubles away from his 8-year-old daughter Emma's curious eyes. Grayson watched as the woman petite with chestnut hair pulled into a neat bun simply shook her head and turned to leave. The businessman grabbed her arm, causing her coffee to slosh over the rim of her cup. "I'm not finished talking to you," he growled. That was all it took. Grayson was on his feet before he could think twice about it, bills forgotten on the table. At 34, he wasn't the scrappy boxer he'd been in his 20s. But years of construction work had kept him strong despite the toll they'd taken on his joints. "Hey," Grayson called, his voice low but carrying the authority he'd developed as a single father. "The lady's done with this conversation." The businessman, balding with an expensive watch glinting on his wrist, turned to him with a sneer. "Mind your own business, pal. This doesn't concern you." Grayson stepped closer, towering over both of them at 6'2". "She clearly wants to leave. That makes it my concern." He turned to the woman, whose deep brown eyes registered surprise and something else, relief, maybe. "You okay, madam?" "I'm fine," she said, her voice steady despite the coffee dripping from her cup onto her simple but elegant blouse. "Thank you." The businessman released her arm with a scoff. "Whatever, she's not worth my time anyway." He shot one last glare at Grayson. "Nice hero act. Hope it helps with whatever midlife crisis you're having." His eyes flicked to Grayson's worn jeans and faded flannel shirt before he stormed out of the coffee shop. An awkward silence fell as the other patrons pretended they hadn't been watching the scene unfold. The barista, a college kid named Marco who knew Grayson as a regular, offered a thumbs up from behind the counter. "I'm Grayson," he said to the woman, extending his hand. "Grayson Reed." She took it, her grip surprisingly firm. "Victoria Zanetti, most people call me Vic." She glanced at his table, where his bills were scattered for all to see. "I'm sorry if I interrupted something important." Grayson's cheeks warmed as he hurried back to gather his papers. "Nothing that can't wait, just adult stuff." He stuffed the bills into his worn leather satchel. "Did you know that guy?" Victoria shook her head, dabbing at her blouse with a napkin Marco had silently provided. "No, he was upset about the line taking too long and thought I cut in front of him, which I didn't. Then he recognized me and things got complicated." "Recognized you?" Grayson asked, raising an eyebrow. Victoria waved her hand dismissively. "It's not important. What is important is that I owe you a thank you and a coffee, since yours is probably cold by now." She gestured to his abandoned mug on the table. Grayson hesitated. He'd come to the coffee shop to figure out how he was going to make rent this month after unexpected car repairs had drained his savings. The last thing he needed was to waste time chatting with a stranger, no matter how intriguing. "That's not necessary," he said. "I would have done it for anyone." "I believe you," Victoria said, with a small smile that reached her eyes. "But I insist. Unless you have somewhere to be," Grayson checked his watch. He had 2 hours before he needed to pick Emma up from her friend Lily's house. 2 hours he'd planned to use job hunting online for weekend work to supplement his construction income. "I have a little time," he conceded, surprising himself. There was something about Victoria that made him want to linger, despite his better judgment. They settled at his table with fresh coffees. Victoria had ordered hers black, which somehow surprised him, and Grayson found himself relaxing despite the financial stress that had been consuming him moments before. "So, what do you do, Grayson?" Victoria asked, her hands wrapped around her mug as if seeking its warmth despite the mild autumn day. "Construction, mostly," he replied. "I work for Dennison Builders. Have been for about 5 years now. He didn't mention that he was perpetually one paycheck away from disaster since his wife had died from cancer 3 years ago, leaving him to raise Emma alone. Do you enjoy it? The question caught him off guard. Most people didn't ask about enjoyment when it came to blue-collar work. Parts of it, he admitted. I like seeing something tangible at the end of the day, knowing I helped build something that will last. He shrugged. But it's hard on the body, and the hours can be tough with Emma. That's my daughter, she's 8. Victoria's expression softened at the mention of his daughter. Single dad, Grayson nodded, running a hand through his dark hair, which was overdue for a cut. Her mom passed away 3 years ago. Cancer. He'd said it enough times that the words didn't stick in his throat anymore, but they still carried weight. I'm sorry, Victoria said, and unlike when most people said it, she didn't immediately look away in discomfort. That must be incredibly difficult. We manage, Grayson said, then wondered why he was sharing so much with a stranger. What about you? What do you do when you're not being harassed by jerks in coffee shops? Victoria's laugh was unexpectedly melodic. I work in business, she said vaguely. Management. It's mostly boring paperwork and meetings. Is that why you're hiding out in a neighborhood coffee shop instead of some fancy downtown place? Her eyebrows rose slightly. Hiding out. Sorry, Grayson backpedaled. I just meant, you don't seem like you're from around here. He gestured to her clothing, which even with the coffee stain was clearly expensive. I'm not usually, Victoria admitted, but I'm considering investing in this area, and I like to get a feel for neighborhoods before I make decisions. She stirred her coffee thoughtfully. What do you think of this place? The neighborhood, I mean. Grayson considered the question. His modest rental house was a few blocks away, in a neighborhood that had seen better days, but was still safe enough that he let Emma ride her bike to the corner store sometimes. It's good, he said finally. People look out for each other here. It's not fancy, but it's home. He thought about the community garden where he volunteered on Sundays with Emma, and the library where Miss Patel always saved new adventure books for his daughter. Victoria nodded, looking genuinely interested. That's what I've heard. Community matters. She glanced at her watch, a slim, elegant timepiece that probably cost more than Grayson's monthly rent. I should get going. I have a meeting in half an hour. As she stood, Grayson felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. Their conversation had been a pleasant diversion from his worries, and there was something about Victoria's direct gaze and thoughtful questions that intrigued him. It was nice meeting you, Grayson, she said, extending her hand again. Thank you again for stepping in. He shook her hand, noticing again how strong her grip was for someone so petite. Anytime. Maybe I'll see you around if you decide to invest in our neighborhood. Victoria smiled, a genuine smile that transformed her serious face. Maybe you will. As she walked away, Grayson found himself watching her go, struck by the confidence in her stride despite her small stature. Then he shook his head, returning to reality. He had bills to pay and a daughter to feed. Daydreaming about a woman like Victoria Zanetti, clearly successful, obviously out of his league, was a luxury he couldn't afford. He pulled his laptop from his satchel and opened his email, pushing thoughts of Victoria aside. 2 hours later, as he walked to pick up Emma, he'd almost convinced himself he'd never see her again. He couldn't have been more wrong. 3 days later, Grayson was helping Emma with her science project, a model of the solar system made from painted styrofoam balls, when his phone rang. The number was unfamiliar, and he almost let it go to voicemail, but the thought that it might be a potential side job made him answer. Grayson Reed, he said, pinning the phone between his ear and shoulder as he helped Emma position Jupiter on its wire. Mr. Reed, this is Terrence Walsh from Zanetti Developments. I understand you work in construction. Grayson's hand stilled. Zanetti, it couldn't be a coincidence. Yes, that's right. We're looking for someone with your expertise for a special project. It would involve overseeing a community center renovation in your neighborhood. Miss Zanetti specifically requested you. Grayson's mind raced. Miss Zanetti, Victoria Zanetti, our CEO, she mentioned meeting you recently and being impressed by your character. Grayson nearly dropped the phone. CEO, the woman he'd defended was the head of a development company. Yes, we met briefly. Excellent. The position would be full-time for at least 6 months, with benefits and a significant salary increase from your current position, according to our research. Grayson's heart pounded. A stable job with benefits would be life-changing for him and Emma, but something felt off about the offer. Why me? I'm not a foreman, I'm just a regular construction worker. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Miss Zanetti was quite insistent. She said you know the neighborhood and would ensure the project maintained its character. Would you be interested in coming in for a formal interview tomorrow? Dad, you're squishing Mars, Emma interrupted, pointing to the red planet that was indeed being crushed in his tightening grip. Sorry, Pumpkin, he whispered, then returned to the call. Yes, I'd be interested. What time? After arranging the details and hanging up, Grayson sat back on his heels, staring at the half-completed solar system. What's wrong, Dad? Emma asked, her blue eyes so like her mother's searching his face with the perceptiveness that sometimes unnerved him. Nothing's wrong, he assured her, ruffling her blonde curls. Just a potential new job, a better one. Will you still have time to help me with homework and stuff? Her lower lip jutted out slightly. Grayson pulled her into a hug, his heart squeezing with love for this little person who was his whole world. Always, Pumpkin. You're my #1 priority, no matter what. As Emma returned to carefully painting Neptune, Grayson's mind drifted back to Victoria. CEO of Zanetti Developments. It explained the expensive clothes and the way the businessman had recognized her. But why would she recommend him for a job after one brief meeting? Was it gratitude for his intervention or something else? The next day, after dropping Emma at school, Grayson arrived at the Zanetti Developments offices in downtown Pine Ridge. The gleaming glass building was intimidating, and he felt underdressed in his best jeans and button-down shirt, the closest thing he had to business attire. The receptionist directed him to the 11th floor, where he was met by Terrence Walsh, a lean man in his 40s with a friendly but professional demeanor. Mr. Reed, thank you for coming in, Walsh said, shaking his hand. Miss Zanetti is looking forward to speaking with you personally, but first, I'd like to go over the details of the position. The job was even better than Grayson had imagined. Not only would he be overseeing the renovation of an old community center in his neighborhood, but the salary was nearly double what he currently made, with health insurance that would cover both him and Emma. This seems too good to be true, Grayson said honestly after Walsh had finished his explanation. Why me? There must be dozens of more qualified candidates. Walsh smiled enigmatically. Miss Zanetti has a talent for recognizing potential. She believes you're exactly what this project needs. He glanced at his watch. Speaking of Miss Zanetti, she should be ready for you now. Follow me. Walsh led him down a corridor to a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows that offered a panoramic view of Pine Ridge. And there, standing by the window, was Victoria, looking every inch the CEO in a tailored navy suit, her chestnut hair loose around her shoulders. Mr. Reed, she said, turning to face him with that same direct gaze that had caught his attention in the coffee shop. Thank you for coming. Walsh excused himself, closing the door behind him and leaving Grayson alone with Victoria. So, Grayson said, unable to keep a hint of accusation from his voice, CEO of Zanetti Developments, you left that part out at the coffee shop. Victoria smiled apologetically. I did. People treat me differently when they know who I am. It was refreshing to have a conversation where someone just saw me as a person, not a position. She gestured to a chair across from her desk. Please sit. Grayson remained standing. Is this job offer some kind of charity? Because if it is, I'm not interested. I don't need handouts. Victoria's expression turned serious. It's not charity, Grayson. It's an opportunity, one that benefits both of us. I need someone who cares about that neighborhood to oversee this project, someone who will make sure we're enhancing the community, not changing its character. She moved to sit behind her desk. The fact that you stood up for a stranger when it wasn't convenient tells me what kind of person you are. The kind I want representing my company in that neighborhood. Grayson hesitated, then finally sat. I don't have the experience you'd typically look for in a position like this. Experience can be gained, Victoria said simply. Integrity, on the other hand, she shrugged. That's much rarer. Grayson studied her, searching for signs that this was some elaborate game or misplaced gratitude, but her expression remained open and sincere. What about my daughter? The hours at Denison are predictable. I need to be able to pick her up from school, be there for her. Victoria nodded. Family comes first. The position would have flexible hours, and you'd be welcome to bring your daughter to the site after school if needed. We're creating a community space. Having a child's perspective would actually be valuable. It sounded perfect, almost too perfect. Why are you really doing this? Victoria leaned forward, her elbows on the desk. Because when I walked into that coffee shop, I was having the worst day of my professional life. That man who harassed me. He'd just pulled his company's investment from a major project, putting dozens of jobs at risk. I was questioning every decision I'd made, wondering if I was cut out for this role at all. Her eyes met his, unflinching. And then you stood up for me not because of who I am or what I could do for you, but simply because it was the right thing to do. It reminded me why I started this company in the first place, to make a difference, to build things that matter. Grayson absorbed her words, surprised by her vulnerability. And what happens after the 6 months? If all goes well, there will be other projects. But even if there aren't, you'll have gained valuable experience that will make you highly employable elsewhere. She smiled. Though I have a feeling you'll be with us for much longer than 6 months. Something in her voice made his pulse quicken, but he pushed the feeling aside. This was a professional opportunity, nothing more. The fact that he found Victoria Zanetti intriguing and, yes, attractive was irrelevant. When would I start? He asked, making his decision. Victoria's smile widened. How does Monday sound? I'll need to give notice at Denison, of course. 2 weeks then. At his nod, she stood and extended her hand. Welcome to Zanetti Developments, Mr. Reed. As they shook hands, Grayson couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just changed in ways he couldn't yet imagine. The first month of working for Zanetti Developments passed in a blur of activity. Grayson gave notice at Denison, explaining the opportunity to his surprised but supportive foreman. He spent hours studying the plans for the community center, familiarizing himself with every aspect of the project. To his surprise, the job was even better than advertised. Victoria had assembled a talented team that respected his input, despite his relative inexperience in a leadership role. The flexible hours meant he could drop Emma off at school each morning and pick her up each afternoon. On days when she didn't have activities, she would join him at the site, charming the crew with her curious questions and earnest suggestions about what kids would want in a community center. Victoria herself visited the site weekly, arriving in her understated luxury car and changing into jeans and work boots to walk through the renovation with Grayson. He found himself looking forward to these visits more than he cared to admit, appreciating her sharp mind and genuine passion for the project. The local art teacher reached out about having her students create murals for the children's area, Grayson told Victoria during one such visit, 6 weeks into the project. I think it's a great idea, gets the community involved, gives the kids ownership of the space. Victoria nodded, making notes on her tablet. I love it. Set it up, and see if the high school woodworking class would be interested in building some of the furniture for the reading nook. They were standing in what would eventually be the main activity room, surrounded by exposed beams and half-finished walls. The October sun streamed through the windows, catching the auburn highlights in Victoria's hair. You're good at this, she said, glancing up from her tablet to find him watching her. Building community, not just buildings. Grayson shrugged, embarrassed at being caught staring. It's easy when it's your own neighborhood. These are my people. Victoria's expression turned thoughtful. That's what most developers miss. They see properties, not people. She hesitated, then added, "Would you be free for dinner this Friday? There's a potential donor I'd like you to meet. Your perspective on the neighborhood would be valuable." "I'd have to find someone to watch Emma," Grayson said, mentally running through his options. His neighbor, Mrs. Patel, often watched Emma in emergencies, but he hated to impose. "Bring her," Victoria suggested. "It's an early dinner, nothing formal. The donor has grandchildren Emma's age. She might enjoy meeting them." Grayson hesitated. This sounded more personal than their previous professional interactions, and he wasn't sure if that was a good idea. Victoria was his boss, after all, and someone from a completely different world than his. "It's just dinner, Grayson," Victoria said, seeming to read his reluctance, "and it would really help with the project." "All right," he agreed. "Where and when?" "I'll text you the details," she said with a smile that made his chest tighten in a way he hadn't experienced since before his wife got sick. As Victoria moved away to speak with one of the electricians, Grayson reminded himself firmly that this was a professional relationship. Victoria Zanetti might be kind, brilliant, and yes, beautiful, but she was also his employer and so far out of his league that any other thoughts were pure fantasy. Friday evening found Grayson and Emma standing outside Bella Not, an upscale Italian restaurant that would normally be well beyond his budget. Emma, dressed in her favorite blue dress and with her hair carefully braided, bounced excitedly beside him. "Dad, is Miss Victoria your girlfriend?" She asked for the third time since he'd told her about the dinner. "No, Pumpkin, she's my boss," Grayson repeated patiently. "This is a work dinner." Emma looked skeptical. "But you smile more when you talk about her, and you changed your shirt 3 times. Grayson felt his cheeks warm. Kids and their uncanny observations. "I just wanted to look professional," he muttered as they entered the restaurant. Victoria was already seated at a table near the back, deep in conversation with an elderly gentleman. She looked up as they approached, her face lighting up in a way that made Grayson's heart skip. "Grayson, Emma," she greeted them, standing to shake Grayson's hand and then, to his surprise, kneeling slightly to shake Emma's as well. "I'm so glad you could both make it. This is Mr. Harrison, one of our most valued supporters." The elderly man stood, his handshake firm despite his age. "Please call me George. Victoria tells me you're the man making sure this community center actually serves the community." Refreshing approach. Dinner progressed pleasantly, with Mr. Harrison asking thoughtful questions about the neighborhood and seeming genuinely interested in Emma's enthusiastic descriptions of what she hoped to do at the community center once it was finished. "I want to learn robotics," she declared, twirling spaghetti onto her fork with careful concentration. "And maybe start a club for kids who like science." "That sounds wonderful," Victoria said, her expression soft as she watched Emma. "We should make sure there's space for that." "What do you think, Grayson?" He nodded, touched by Victoria's genuine interest in his daughter's ideas. "Definitely. There's that smaller room off the main hall that would work perfectly for a science club." As the evening progressed, Grayson found himself relaxing, enjoying the conversation that flowed easily among the 4 of them. Mr. Harrison shared stories of his own children and grandchildren, while Victoria revealed more about her background than she had in all their previous conversations combined. "My father started the company," she explained as they enjoyed dessert tiramisu for the adults and gelato for Emma. "But he focused solely on luxury developments. When I took over 5 years ago, I wanted to diversify to create projects that served communities of all income levels." "A noble goal," Mr. Harrison said approvingly, "and one I'm happy to support." "Consider me in for the donation we discussed, Victoria. I like what I see here." After Mr. Harrison departed, leaving them with promises of a substantial check, Victoria turned to Grayson with a triumphant smile. That went even better than I'd hoped. Thank you both for coming. It was my pleasure, Grayson said sincerely, though I'm not sure how much I contributed. More than you know, Victoria assured him. She glanced at Emma, who was happily finishing her gelato. Would you two like to take a walk? There's a nice park just down the street with a playground. Emma's eyes lit up. Can we, Dad, please? Grayson hesitated, checking his watch. It was only 7:30, not too late for a Friday. Sure, why not? The October evening was cool but pleasant as they strolled to the park, Emma skipping ahead of them. Her earlier shyness around Victoria completely vanished. She's amazing, Victoria said, watching Emma climb onto a swing. So bright and curious. She takes after her mom that way, Grayson said, a familiar ache in his chest whenever he thought of Sarah. She was a science teacher. Victoria was quiet for a moment as they sat on a bench facing the playground. Do you mind if I ask what happened to your wife? Grayson watched Emma pump her legs, gaining height on the swing. Breast cancer. It was already stage 4 when they found it. She fought hard for a year, but... He shrugged, the gesture containing all the helplessness he'd felt watching Sarah slip away. I'm so sorry, Victoria said softly, and he could hear the genuine empathy in her voice. How old was Emma? 5, old enough to understand something bad was happening, but too young to really grasp it. He smiled sadly. She still asks about her mom sometimes, wants to know if she would be proud of her science projects. And you tell her yes, Victoria guessed. Every time. Grayson turned to look at her. What about you? No husband or kids in the picture, Victoria shook her head, her gaze still on Emma. No. My work has always been my focus. My father died young, and I took over the company at 27. There wasn't much time for a personal life. She paused. And to be honest, most of the men I meet are either intimidated by my position or only interested in what I can do for them. Their loss, Grayson said before he could stop himself. Victoria turned to him, surprise evident in her expression, followed by something warmer. That's kind of you to say. An awkward silence fell between them, filled with things neither of them seemed ready to voice. Dad, watch me. Emma called, pumping her legs furiously on the swing. I see you, Pumpkin, he called back, grateful for the interruption. Victoria checked her watch. I should probably get going. I have an early meeting tomorrow. On a Saturday? Grayson asked, surprised. She smiled ruefully. The price of being the boss. No real days off. She stood, brushing invisible lint from her slacks. Thank you again for tonight. Mr. Harrison's donation will make a huge difference to the project. I'm glad we could help, Grayson said, standing as well. Emma had a great time. As if hearing her name, Emma jumped off the swing and ran over to them. Are we leaving? Miss Victoria has to go, Grayson explained. She has work tomorrow. Emma's face fell. Oh, can we do this again sometime? I liked having dinner with you. Victoria's expression softened as she looked at Emma. I would love that, if it's okay with your dad. Both females turned expectant gazes on Grayson, who found himself unable to resist their combined power. Sure, we can do it again sometime. Victoria's smile was radiant. Perfect. I'll see you both soon. She hesitated, then leaned in to give Emma a quick hug before turning to Grayson. For a moment, he thought she might hug him too, but she simply extended her hand. Good night, Grayson. Good night, Victoria, he replied, taking her hand and feeling that same spark of connection that had been growing stronger with each of their interactions. As they watched her walk away, Emma slipped her hand into his. I really like her, Dad. Grayson squeezed his daughter's hand, his eyes still on Victoria's retreating figure. Me too, Pumpkin. Me too. Over the next 2 months, the lines between professional and personal began to blur. Victoria's visits to the construction site became more frequent, often extending into lunch discussions about the project that gradually shifted to conversations about their lives, their hopes, their perspectives on everything from politics to parenting. Emma's birthday fell in early December, and to Grayson's surprise, Victoria asked if she might attend the small celebration he'd planned at their home. You don't have to, he assured her when she brought it up during one of their now regular coffee meetings. It's just going to be a few of her friends from school, nothing fancy. Victoria's expression was hard to read. If you'd rather I didn't come, no, he interrupted quickly. I just don't want you to feel obligated because I work for you. She studied him for a moment, her coffee forgotten. Grayson, I hope you know by now that I value our. She paused, seeming to search for the right word. Friendship beyond our professional relationship. Friendship. The word both warmed and disappointed him, though he knew it was the appropriate term for whatever was developing between them. In that case, he said, pushing aside the more complicated feelings, Emma would love to have you there. She talks about you constantly. Victoria's smile lit up her face. I'll be there. What does she want for her birthday? The party was a success, with 6 of Emma's friends running through their small house, high on cake and excitement. Victoria arrived bearing a gift that made Emma squeal with delight, a professional-grade telescope that Grayson knew must have cost more than he'd spend on all of Emma's presents combined. This is too much, he murmured to Victoria as they watched Emma showing off the telescope to her friends. Victoria shook her head. It's not. My grandfather gave me one just like it when I was her age. It changed my life, made me realize how vast the universe is, how many possibilities there are out there. Her expression was soft with memory. I want her to have that same experience. Something shifted in Grayson's chest as he watched Victoria help Emma set up the telescope on their small back porch, patiently explaining how to focus the lens and find different celestial bodies. This wasn't the behavior of a boss or even a casual friend. This was something more. After the other children had gone home and Emma had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from the day's excitement, Grayson and Victoria sat on his worn couch, each nursing a glass of wine. Thank you, he said quietly. Not just for the telescope, but for being so kind to Emma. It means a lot to her. To both of us. Victoria set her wine glass on the coffee table, her expression serious. Grayson, I need to tell you something, and I'm not sure how. His heart sank. Was she going to tell him the project was ending early, that she'd found someone more qualified to take his place? Just say it, he advised, bracing himself. She took a deep breath. I have feelings for you, feelings that go well beyond friendship or professional admiration. She held up a hand when he started to speak. Please let me finish. I know this complicates things. I'm your boss, and there's a power dynamic that can't be ignored. If you don't feel the same way, or if you're uncomfortable with this, I completely understand, and it won't affect your job in any way. Grayson stared at her, processing her words. Victoria Zanetti had feelings for him. It seemed impossible. Say something, she prompted when his silence stretched on too long. I have feelings for you too, he admitted, the words coming easier than he expected. But you're right, it's complicated, not just because you're my boss, but because of our different worlds. You run a multi-million-dollar company. I'm a single dad who was living paycheck to paycheck before you hired me. I have a child to consider, a child who's already growing attached to you. Victoria moved closer to him on the couch. I understand those concerns. They're valid. But Grayson, I've never met anyone like you, someone who's so genuine, so principled, so real. She shook her head slightly. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Everyone wants something from me. Everyone has an angle, but not you. From the moment you stood up for me in that coffee shop, not knowing or caring who I was, I've been drawn to you. Grayson's heart hammered in his chest as she placed her hand on his. What are you saying exactly? I'm saying I want to see where this could go, if you're willing. Her brown eyes searched his, vulnerable in a way he'd never seen before. We can take it slow, be discreet at work, but I don't want to pretend these feelings don't exist anymore. Grayson thought about all the reasons this was a bad idea, the professional complications, the lifestyle differences, the potential for Emma to get hurt if things didn't work out. But he also thought about the way Victoria looked at his daughter with such genuine affection, the way she respected his opinions even when they differed from hers, the way he felt more alive in her presence than he had in years. "I want that too," he said finally, turning his hand to intertwine his fingers with hers. "But Emma has to come first, always." "I wouldn't have it any other way," Victoria assured him, her smile radiant with relief. As if drawn by an invisible force, they leaned toward each other until their lips met in a kiss that was tentative at first, then deepened with shared longing. When they finally pulled apart, Grayson felt as though something fundamental had shifted in his universe, rearranging stars into new and hopeful constellations. The next 3 months unfolded like a dream. Grayson and Victoria kept their relationship professional at work, but evenings and weekends found them exploring their growing feelings for each other. They took Emma to museums and parks, cooked dinner together in his small kitchen, and spent hours talking about everything and nothing. Victoria fit into their lives with surprising ease, her wealth and status forgotten when she was laughing at Emma's jokes or helping Grayson fix a leaky faucet in his aging house. She never made him feel less than, never flaunted her resources, though she was generous in ways he gradually learned to accept. "I want to take you both to the symphony next weekend," she suggested one evening as they watched Emma working on her latest science project, a model of DNA made from pipe cleaners and beads. "They're doing a family concert with music from movies kids love." "That sounds expensive," Grayson said automatically, then caught himself. They'd had this conversation before. Victoria's gentle insistence that she could share her resources without it being charity was gradually wearing down his pride. She raised an eyebrow, a smile playing at her lips. "Is that a no?" he sighed, returning her smile. "It's a yes. Emma will love it." As winter melted into spring, the community center project neared completion. The transformation was remarkable. What had once been a dilapidated building was now a vibrant space with classrooms, activity areas, a kitchen for cooking classes, and the science room that had been designed with Emma's input. "We're ahead of schedule and under budget," Grayson reported during a project meeting in late April. "We should be ready for the grand opening in 3 weeks." Victoria nodded approvingly. "Excellent work, everyone. Grayson, could I speak with you privately after the meeting?" The rest of the team filed out, leaving them alone in the conference room. As soon as the door closed, Victoria's professional demeanor softened. "Have you thought about what's next?" she asked. After the community center is finished, Grayson had been thinking about little else. Their arrangement had always been for 6 months, and while Victoria had hinted there would be other projects, they hadn't discussed specifics. "I assumed you'd let me know if there was another position available," he said carefully. Victoria took a deep breath. "Actually, I've been considering creating a new role. Director of Community Development. You'd oversee all of our projects that focus on neighborhood improvement, affordable housing, that sort of thing." Grayson's eyebrows rose. "That sounds like a major position." "It would be. With a salary to match." She held his gaze steadily. "Before you say anything, this isn't about our relationship. The board has reviewed your work on the community center and they're impressed. This offer would stand regardless of what's happening between us personally." Grayson believed her Victoria had always been scrupulously ethical about separating their professional and personal lives. Still, it was a lot to process. "I'd need to think about it," he said finally. "Talk to Emma. It would mean more responsibility, probably longer hours sometimes." Victoria nodded. "Of course, take all the time you need." She hesitated, then added, "There's something else I wanted to discuss with you, something personal." Her serious tone made his chest tighten. "What is it?" "My lease is up next month," she said, fiddling with her pen in an uncharacteristically nervous gesture. "And I've been thinking, what if I looked for a place in this neighborhood, somewhere close to you and Emma?" Grayson stared at her, processing the implication. "You want to move here?" "To this neighborhood?" The average home price here was probably a tenth of what her current downtown condo was worth. She nodded, watching his reaction carefully. "I love it here. I love the community feel, the the way neighbors know each other. And most importantly, her voice softened, I love spending time with you and Emma. I want more of that in my life. Grayson felt something expand in his chest, hope, possibility, future. You're serious about this, about us? Completely serious, Victoria confirmed, reaching across the table to take his hand. I know it's only been a few months, but Grayson, I'm falling in love with you. With both of you, actually. I've never felt this way before. The words he'd been holding back for weeks finally escaped. I love you too, and Emma adores you. Victoria's smile was luminous. So, what do you think about me moving closer? Grayson thought about all that had happened since that day in the coffee shop, how his life had transformed in ways he never could have imagined. Not just financially, but emotionally. Victoria had brought joy and possibility back into his world when he'd thought those things were permanently dimmed by Sarah's death. I think, he said slowly, that instead of getting a new place, you might consider moving into ours. The words surprised him even as he said them, but they felt right. Victoria's eyes widened. Are you asking me to move in with you? I am, he confirmed, surprising himself with his certainty. If it's not too soon, if you think you could be happy in our little house. I'd be happy anywhere with you too, she said, her voice thick with emotion. But what about Emma? Have you talked to her about this? Grayson smiled, remembering a conversation from just days ago. She actually suggested it. Asked why you didn't just live with us since you're there most of the time anyway. Victoria laughed, tears glistening in her eyes. Smart kid. The smartest, he agreed, squeezing her hand. So what do you say? Want to join our little family? Fair warning, the plumbing is ancient and the kitchen is tiny. Yes, Victoria said without hesitation, to all of it, the job, the move, everything. She stood and came around the table, pulling him to his feet and into her arms. I never expected this, you know. When that man was harassing me in the coffee shop, I never imagined that the kind stranger who stepped in would change my life. Grayson held her close, marveling at the unlikely journey that had brought them to this moment. I just did what anyone would do. Victoria leaned back to look at him, her expression tender. That's where you're wrong. What you did standing up for someone without thought of reward or recognition, it's rare. It's special. She touched his face gently. You're special, Grayson Reed. And I'm the luckiest woman alive that you picked that particular coffee shop on that particular day. As he bent to kiss her, Grayson silently thanked whatever twist of fate had led him there to that moment, to this woman, to the second chance at love and family that he'd never expected to find. 6 months later, on a perfect autumn day, the three of them stood together on the back deck of their new home, a comfortable 4-bedroom house in the same neighborhood, close enough that Emma could still walk to school and her friends' homes. The yard was spacious enough for the puppy they'd adopted, a rescue named Rocket, who was currently chasing leaves around the lawn. I still can't believe we live here, Grayson said, his arm around Victoria's waist as they watched Emma and Rocket play. Victoria leaned into him, her head on his shoulder. Believe it, though I maintain we could have stayed in your house. I loved it there. This is better for all of us, he insisted, though he sometimes missed the cozy intimacy of his old place. Room for Emma to grow, space for your home office, and a guest room for when your mom visits. Victoria smiled up at him. True, and room for more someday, if that's something you might want. His heart skipped at the implication. More, as in... Another child, maybe, she said softly. I never thought I wanted kids until I met Emma. Now I can't imagine my life without her, without both of you. Grayson turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. Victoria Zanetti, are you saying you want to have a baby with me? She laughed, her cheeks flushing slightly. Eventually, yes. After we're married, preferably. Married? His heart was racing now. They discussed marriage in abstract terms, but never with any specificity. Victoria's expression turned uncertain. Is that not something you want? In answer, Grayson released her hands and reached into his pocket, pulling out the small velvet box he'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the perfect moment. It seemed that moment was now. I was planning to do this next weekend at the community center's 6-month celebration, he said, opening the box to reveal a simple but elegant diamond ring. But since you brought it up. Victoria's hand flew to her mouth, her eyes widening. Grayson dropped to one knee, looking up at the woman who had transformed his life in ways he never could have imagined. Victoria Zanetti, I love you more than I ever thought possible. You've brought joy and hope back into my life and Emma's. Would you do us the honor of becoming part of our family officially? Will you marry me? Yes, she whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. Yes, 1,000 times yes. As he slid the ring onto her finger and stood to kiss her, they heard Emma's delighted squeal. She'd seen the proposal and was racing toward them, Rocket barking excitedly at her heels. Did she say yes? Emma demanded, skidding to a stop beside them. Are you going to be my mom now? She asked Victoria, her eyes shining with hope. Victoria knelt down to Emma's level, her voice gentle but firm. I will never try to replace your mom, Emma. She will always be your mother, and you'll always carry her in your heart. But if you'll have me, I would be honored to be your bonus mom. Emma launched herself into Victoria's arms. That's even better. A bonus mom. As Grayson joined their embrace, holding the two most important people in his world, he marveled at how a simple act of standing up for someone in need had led to this moment of perfect happiness. I love you, he murmured against Victoria's hair. Both of you. We love you too, Dad, Emma replied, her voice muffled against his shirt. And we're going to be the best family ever. As the autumn sun warmed their embrace, Grayson knew with absolute certainty that his daughter was right. They already were.